Okay, hello everyone. So today I'll be talking about temperature and its effect on the SARS-CoV-2 structural proteins. It's a little bit different from the previous discussion. So it is more of a theoretical study. And I'm a faculty here at National Institute of Technology in India. So coming to the severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus or SARS-CoV-2, it's one of the worst known human pandemics which began during the winters of 2019. And but it is not the first coronavirus. So previously also there are some like 7 different kinds which are known to affect humans. So we also had earlier we also had some pandemics which were caused due to SARS in around 2002 November and MERS during the summer of 2008. So one peculiarity of this these viruses is they're very season specific. So they are seen that they affect only during a particular time period. So that is what increased the curiosity. So in 2002 November, the SARS started. The first incident of SARS had occurred, and 2019 November SARS-CoV-2 it originated in Wuhan. So this was in the winters, and now there is another virus, MERS, which is another coronavirus. This was in the summer of 2008, but they are found in particular season only. So with this, we started our work, and so then we read some literature, and we found that the viability of the SARS-CoV-2, it was different on different surface. So like if you take smooth surface like plastic or iron, and so they are much more viable compared to that of paper or tissue or wood or cloth. So and the surgical mask, they can stay up to 7 days. So it is like the viability of the virus is differing in different surface. So, and there is this we all know about SARS and soap. So it's said that the soap, what it does is it is breaking the virus envelope. Why? Because the soap particles, they are similar to the envelope particles, and that is helping to disintegrate the virus structure. So in a nutshell, we can say that the modulation of the atmospheric condition and like the surface and or the soap environment, so all these modulations, they can affect the viability of the virus. Okay. And these viruses are also temperature sensitive. So it is generally said that you can't kill the virus because you can't autoclave and you can kill the virus, unlike bacteria. So, but we are seeing that they are very season specific, and they're also temperature sensitive, because in tropical countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, or Thailand, where the temperature is quite high and the humidity also is very high, they did not see any major community outbreaks of the SARS virus in 2002. So that is something which we should think about. And later on, when we see about the other viruses like rhinovirus, flu virus, influenza, they are temperature sensitive. So during the winters, we get the flu viruses and all. So the viruses, they are temperature sensitive, and humidity is also influencing the viability of the virus. All right. So now coming back to the SARS-CoV-2. So SARS-CoV-2 has a this is a cartoon representation. So it has 4 different structural proteins: the spike protein in blue, the nucleocapsid, okay, the membrane, and the envelope protein, right? And it is surrounding the single-stranded RNA, which is the genome of the virus. So when the virus is exposed to different temperature conditions, then the initial interactions of the atmosphere. So first interaction it will make with the structural proteins which are present outside of the virus. So, and the first interaction will be made with this particular protein, the spike protein, which is projected outwards like outside of the virus. So in our study, we are going to focus on the spike glycoprotein and how it is behaving at different temperatures. So the spike glycoprotein, it is actually a homotrimer. So there are 3 different monomers. They are together, they come together, and they form a trimer. And in this trimer, you can see a S1 domain and a S2 domain. So S1 domain is colored in magenta and S2 in ice blue. So S1 domain has a receptor binding domain which binds to the ACE2 receptor. So ACE2 receptor is the angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptor. And there is also N-terminal domain. So we'll see more of this later on. So by using MD simulations, the dynamics of the spike glycoprotein of SARS-CoV-2 at different temperatures we try to study. Okay, so this is the genome structure. It is like more than 1,000 residue long amino acids are there in this protein in a single monomer. And then you have this blue part, which is the N-terminal domain. Then you have a receptor binding domain, which is in yellow. And then you have a green part, which is this, the one which I've shown in ice blue. So this is the S2 domain. So this domain is lying inside the envelope, and this is lying on the top. Okay. So we are going to use computer simulations, so molecular dynamic simulations. So before going into that, so what are computer simulations? So in computer simulations, what we do is we imitate the real world system, and we use a physical model, and we try to get more and more information so that we can predict something. So when we create a computer model, it is a mathematical representation of the real world, and we have a computer program. So then we do some experiment, we alter some variable on this mathematical model and observe the property or the process or the behavior of the system. So after that, we go back and we try to verify and validate if what we predicted is correct or wrong. So, and the simulations, we have been using it for weather forecasting, car designing, car crash simulation, building architecture, bridge simulation, aeronautics, building stability, life sciences. So here also we're going to use computer simulations. So why computer simulations? Because computer simulations have an advantage because they are very safe. We're not going to harm a person or environment, and we can predict the future course of a particular event. It is also very economic because it is time saving, and the money incurred in experiments you can save. And you can also observe what is happening at the molecular level, so you can visualize the events. And on top of that, you can also replicate. You can do it more than once, and you can see if it is producing the same result and what is the alteration if you change the variable or change the environment. The only disadvantage of using computer simulation is there is a lot of assumptions, approximations, and we also require high power. So for my study, I have used the Exceed NERSC collaboration. We have used a supercomputer Cori, and and we have done a molecular dynamics simulations. So what we have done is like, it is similar to like this. You do an experiment at the macroscopic level, but what we are going to see is at the microscopic level. So in the microscopic level, we are creating an artificial environment, and and we are keeping a temperature of around 300 to 310 Kelvin. So it's near cellular environment. And at the atomistic level, we're going to solve some equation. So, and trying to see what is the resultant, what is the output after a particular time. So that is molecular dynamics simulation. So here, instead of this protein, I'm going to put the spike protein, and I'm going to study the response of this protein at different temperatures. So coming to the results, the spike glycoproteins are sensitive to temperature. How? So we have 5 different systems, and we have temperature 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50 degrees Celsius. And we are going to simulate it using molecular dynamics simulations. for 200 nanoseconds. So after simulation, we are seeing the fluctuation in the protein structure, whether it is going to remain as such, or is it like fluctuating, unfolding, or some major event is happening. That we can see if we check the root mean square deviation of the protein. So we are checking for the S1 domain and S2 domain. And here we can see that S1 domain, there is some difference here in the red, in the green, in the blue part. Whereas in the S2 domain, it is almost similar in the, like they are behaving somewhat similar. So that can be said because the S1 domain is not lying inside the membrane, inside the envelope, the lipid bilayer, but the S2 domain is lying there, and it is very, very surrounded with a lot of lipids, and they also have coil-coil interaction among the proteins. So it is very stable, sort of stable part compared to that of the S1 domain. So, and after that, what we checked is we checked for the average RMSD of the protein, the S1 domain, at different temperatures. So here you can see the RMSD at 10 degrees in black and 20 in red, 30 in green, 40 in blue, and 50 in magenta. So you can clearly make the difference at 30 and 40 degrees Celsius. There is some higher RMSD, so some higher fluctuation is happening here. So the higher RMSD of the S1 domain at 30 degrees and 40 degrees Celsius was seen, but the S2 transmembrane domain, if we check for the average RMSD, it was very stable. Okay. So next we go to the domain flexibility of S1. So the S1 domain is very flexible. So this is only the S1 domain, and we have the different amino acids here. So we have around 600 odd amino acids in the S1 domain. So as I had shown earlier, the S1 domain, you can divide it into two parts, the N-terminal domain and the receptor binding domain. And here, if you see, I have marked here in magenta. So this part is the N-terminal domain. So residues 1 to 333. And the N-terminal domain is quite flexible compared to the C-terminal domain, you can say the receptor binding domain. And one particular peak you can see here at all temperatures, 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. This is the receptor binding motif. So the receptor binding motif is flexible across all temperatures. So this particular motif is actually interacting with the ACE2 domain. So ACE2 receptor and this particular part, the amino acids here, they make an interaction with the ACE2 receptor. So figure, you can see this figure here. So this is the S1 domain from the top. You can see that this is the red one is the receptor binding domain, and the green one is the N-terminal domain. Okay. So, and here in the receptor binding domain, there is a part which binds to the ACE2 receptor. And next we saw for the S2 transmembrane domain, what is the fluctuation of the amino acids here. So here you can see that this part is very, very stable in all the temperatures like 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. So this particular region is quite stable. This is the transmembrane region. But in the end, the C-terminal part, there is very high flexibility. And this flexibility is because it is towards the like the S1 domain is lying on top, whereas the C-terminal domain, it is projecting out from the membrane towards the lower part of the membrane. So that is why it is fluctuating a lot. Okay. So next, then we saw that the N-terminal domain is quite flexible, and so we tried to check if it is not binding to the receptor binding, like it's not binding to any receptor, the ACE2 receptor, then why, is there something special about this N-terminal domain? So then we checked for the alignment. We aligned it with various other proteins which are present in human, and we found there is a lot of similarity with different proteins in the human body. And so at the same time, there is an uncanny correlation between the prevailing literature where the scientists claim that the virus can affect different parts of the human body, and there is a similarity of this N-terminal domain with various human proteins. So apart from that, this N-terminal domain is also binding to a lot of this carbohydrate residues. So it can be taken as a possible therapeutic target also, because it has been seen in other viruses. If you target the N-terminal domain, then it is a good therapeutic target, but we haven't proceeded further in this. So after that, we went to the receptor binding domains. So the receptor binding domain, it behaves differently at higher temperatures. So these are the three different chains. So it's a trimer. We have three different chains, green, blue, and yellow. And the magenta part is the receptor binding motif. So this is the average structure after 200 nanoseconds at 10 degrees Celsius. Then this is at 20, this is at 30, this is at 40, and this at 50. So you can see at 40 and 50 degrees Celsius, it is coming, it's sort of closing, but it is quite open if you see the structure at 30 degrees and 20 degrees and 10 degrees. So the receptor binding flexibility was more apparent at 20 and 30 degrees Celsius, where the three chains moved further away from each other. However, a tighter and well-packed structure was found for the protein at 50 degrees Celsius. Comparing the conformation of the spike protein and ACE2 crystal structure. So we made a comparison of the two structures, and with the receptor binding domain at different temperatures, what structure we found and the crystal structure of ACE2 and spike protein, we saw that this, in an open conformation, the receptor binding domain, it is exposing some residues in this receptor binding motif, which facilitates the binding to the ACE2 receptor. But at 40 degrees and more interestingly at 50 degrees, those residues, they are in a closed loop conformation and they're very compact. So that is why they are sort of buried, and it might hinder its association with the partner proteins. So that might affect its binding to the ACE2 receptor. So later on, we tried to do a PCA analysis, so principal component analysis, where we saw that the spike protein adopts a closed conformation at a higher temperature. So these are the movement of the protein and the C alpha atoms of the amino acids. At 10, 20, and 30 degrees, you can see the three chains, they do not point towards each other. Although the dynamics is very high, they're moving sort of away from each other. But surprisingly, at 40 and 50 degrees Celsius, you can see there is an opposite movement. So they're moving towards the inner side of the protein. So opposite domain movements were observed. The overall structure of the protein, the Ramachandran plot, we didn't see any change at at different temperatures. We didn't see much change in the structure of the spike protein. So which might say, which might hint towards the reversibility of this phenomena. So if you increase the temperature, it is sort of closing. But if you reduce, it might again open up because the protein is not getting affected at all. So at higher temperatures, we did another simulation at even higher temperatures, 70 degrees Celsius. And we saw that higher temperatures, again, it is getting buried and it is closed. So these are the residues which make interaction with the ACE2 receptor. So you can see that it is getting closed. And later on, since glycans, they play a very good, important role in the spike glycoprotein. So we did a simulation of at 10 degrees, then 30 degrees, and at a higher temperature, 50 degrees for 200 nanoseconds. What we saw that irrespective of the presence of the carbohydrates, the dynamics of the protein, it remains similar, although the magnitude is diminished a little bit because of the large number of glycan chains. So to conclude, the receptor binding motif, it stays largely in an open conformation, but surprisingly from around the temperature of 40 degrees, a closed conformation of the motif was seen. At higher temperatures, the receptor binding motif is completely buried. The closing of the receptor binding motif, it buries the receptor binding residues inside the trimer, abolishing the possibility of contacts with the ACE2 receptor and making the spike protein inactive. Our results clearly show that the activity of spike protein is dependent on the external temperatures, where the higher temperature, it renders it completely inactive. So this work has been published already, and if interested, you can go through this. So I would like to thank NIT Warangal and my department. And I'd also like to thank Exceed COVID-19 HPC Consortium for giving me the project, and NERSC for providing me the computing facility to carry out my research. So thank you.